If you're watching this video, then I'm no longer alive.
In the near future, the world faces a crisis brought on by overpopulation and a shortage of resources. To keep control, the United Nations demands that every country reduce its population by 5%. In the United States, this rule takes the shape of a brutal annual test for high school students.
In America, what if only the smartest boys and girls got to live here? And America could be the best country again. Isn't that neat?
Those who score the lowest are executed. No one is safe, not the children of politicians or wealthy families, nor ordinary boys and girls. But beneath the surface, the system is not as fair as it pretends to be.
We've accomplished some pretty incredible things. We balanced the budget. We've cracked down on crime by 26%. We are #1 in education in the entire United States of America.
In Austin, Texas, a young woman named Lena is desperate to prepare her younger brother Simon for the test.
Take your time. Focus on the equation.
Their little siblings, Karen and Joey, sit on the bed playing without a care, while Lena struggles to help Simon study. When it becomes clear he won't manage on his own, she hands him a pair of electronic lenses loaded with the answers. Just as she does, she gets a call from her mother's doctor. The woman insists on leaving the hospital even though her condition is severe and her treatment must continue. Lena hurries to the hospital and meets the doc, who pulls her aside to deliver the truth. The treatment is no longer working, and the best option is to make her mother's final days as comfortable as possible. Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking. 12 hours remain before the test. At the governor's mansion, his son Blake slips past bodyguards and sneaks to his car. Inside, his girlfriend Ellie waits in the back seat and startles him by jumping from the shadows. She laughs at how easily he falls for the same trick, but Blake's mood quickly darkens. He knows this might be their last night together, and he doesn't want to think about the exam. Ellie pulls him away from the tension and into someone else's backyard pool. They swim, they kiss, and in the quiet of the car afterward, Ellie admits how terrified she is. Their moment,
"Hey, Blake, I think I do want something from the kitchen,"
ends abruptly when Vince, one of the governor's security men, finds them and drags Blake back home. Governor Redding scolds his son and reminds him that the exam will decide his entire future. If Blake focuses and survives, he can live however he wants and with whomever he chooses. The father softens, embracing him before sending him to bed. 3 hours before the test, the school grounds are locked down. Guards patrol the fences, cameras track every corner, and the students are herded inside. Simon is shoved from behind and his lens falls out. He searches frantically, but it's gone. A guard notices something suspicious, yet forces him to keep moving. Now, Simon must face the exam without help. Parents say their goodbyes outside the gates while students line up for the final inspection. In the crowd, Blake approaches Lena, begging for a device to cheat. She tells him the truth.
I just gave the last one away.
Nearby, Lena's friend Kellen joins the line and teases her about Blake, but she insists there's nothing between them. Suddenly, a boy is caught with answers written on his arm. He bolts, but guards launch a net and drag him back. Kellen quietly uses his father's access to the school's security system, stealing footage from the cameras and sending it to journalist Wendy Banks. Inside, Blake tries to comfort Ellie, who trembles in fear. 15 minutes before the exam begins, steel gates slam shut around every exit. Students take their seats in classrooms. Teachers step forward and lay down the final rule.
You'll have 2 hours to complete the test. No talking.
The lights in the classrooms dim, and the students begin solving their tasks on electronic tablets. 2 long hours slip away, and when the time is up, the tension becomes unbearable. While the results are being counted, the teenagers squirm in their seats, clutch their heads, and break into tears.
Okay, here are the results.
As teachers start calling out the names of those who failed, each one is escorted out by armed guards. Some try to resist, others attempt to run, but no one escapes. Kellen feels certain he will be taken, yet luck spares him. Ellie isn't so fortunate. Guards seize her right in front of Blake.
Congratulations, you've all passed.
And sent to a waiting room. Desperate, Blake calls his father, begging him to use his power to save Ellie.
Dad? Son, we all have to obey the law, no matter how.
Lena then watches helplessly as Simon is led away with the other failures. In a burst of rage, Blake rushes after the column of students, grabs a fire extinguisher from the wall, and swings it at the guards. The distraction gives Ellie a chance to break free and run back toward her classmates. No one dares to help. Guards overpower Blake and drag Ellie away once again.
No! Let her go! Let her go! Ellie!
A year passes. Now, only 24 hours remain until the next test. Wade, a star athlete, wastes no time preparing and instead shows off his football skills. Meanwhile, a young woman named Sarah seduces her teacher, Mr. Glass, who is set to oversee the exams. Miss Birch notices the girl stepping out of his car, her suspicion clear. At Lena's home, she plays with Joey and Karen, surrounded by boxes of their late mother's belongings. She passed away during the year. Miss Birch arrives with a casserole and tries to comfort Lena, reminding her that Karen faces her first deadly test tomorrow. She promises to help in any way she can. Elsewhere, Blake trains hard in his room. On the wall still hangs a photograph of Ellie. He turns on a camera and begins recording a message.
If you're watching this video, then I'm no longer alive.
Across the city, parents walk their children to the school for their first test, while Lena kneels to encourage Karen. She tells her sister she believes in her, and Karen whispers back that she loves her too. At the same time, Governor Redding prepares for a public speech. Before stepping out, he visits Blake, trying to convince him that nothing could have been done for Ellie since she failed the test. But Blake cannot accept this. Blake walks toward the school, and his bodyguard Vince notices him slipping a letter into a mailbox along the way. At the entrance, Lena meets Kellen once again. This is their final test before graduation, and both know what is at stake. Inside, Kellen crosses paths with Wade, the arrogant athlete who mocks another student in passing. They can't understand how he has managed to pass every year without ever attending classes. Meanwhile, Miss Cole gathers Karen and her classmates to show them an educational video explaining why the tests exist. The weight of it crushes her as she realizes that some of the children in the room will not survive the day. On the screen, an animated film from Asuru Global plays. It tells of a sick and suffering planet until governments took control of their populations. Some nations sent away their elderly, others restricted families to only one child, and in the United States, only the smartest children were allowed to live. Governor Redding is soon handed the video message Blake tried to send. In it, his son declares that he plans to fail the test on purpose, determined to see if his father will still defend the system.
I want my son home now!
Testing's already begun. The school's on complete lockdown.
God damn it! God damn it!
The governor refuses to sit idly by. He makes a call, and the head of security, Mason, receives direct orders. The younger and older students begin their exams. Sarah glances toward Mr. Glass, expecting him to remember what she did to secure her passing score, but he avoids her eyes. Nearby, a small boy named Nathan raises his hand.
I don't know this one. Can you help me?
Miss Cole refuses, insisting that all must face the test under the same conditions.
Sorry, I can't.
When the exam ends, she tells the class to stand and follow the guards if their names are called. The list begins and Nathan is among the first to be taken. Then comes Sarah Foster. Her desperate preparation fails her, and her name seals her fate. Finally, the last name is read.
Lena Michaels.
Blake can't believe it. His name is not called, and he remains untouched. Mason phones the governor with the update, confirming.
Is he safe?
Redding gives the order to begin the procedure. Miss Birch follows Lena as guards move to take her away. She pleads with them.
It's very difficult to believe that she failed the exam. Maybe there was a problem with her tablet? Make it right. Do something, please.
Insisting that Lena is the best student in the class. Her words fall on deaf ears. But before the young woman is let off, Miss Birch manages to slip a magnetic key into her hand. In the student lounge, those who passed are congratulated. They eat, laugh, and dance to loud music, while Kellen's father watches the cameras with relief as his son appears safe among them. Miss Birch rolls her eyes in frustration as Mr. Glass shamelessly flirts with yet another student. Meanwhile, Governor Redding steps onto the stage to deliver his campaign speech. He boasts about the progress made under his leadership. Disgust twists across his face, and he storms out into the hallway. On stage, the governor continues, insisting the test is not barbaric, but proof of 25 years of successful reform. At that very moment, the students who failed are herded into a sterile room, treated like livestock, and ordered to strip. Lena hides the magnetic key in her mouth as Blake draws near the heavily guarded wing of the school. He takes down one of the guards silently and slips into the control room. Watching from a feed, Kellen sees the failed students being given new uniforms and shackled to chairs. Guards prepare syringes filled with cloudy liquid. As Governor Redding announces his candidacy for president to the nation, Blake shuts off the school's power, plunging the building into darkness and halting the injections. Mason quickly discovers the unconscious guard, while the condemned students erupt into chaos, fighting back against their captors. In the confusion, Lena unlocks a door with a key and escapes. The rebellion is crushed as guards force the students back into their restraints, but it is already too late. wait, Lena is missing. On another floor, a guard spots her, but she introduces herself as Miss Birch and flashes the magnetic key, buying herself a few precious seconds of freedom. The guard grows suspicious when he notices Lena wearing the same uniform as the condemned students. The moment he turns his back, she attacks, but he overpowers her easily. Just as he prepares to restrain her, Blake arrives and takes the man down, pulling Lena to safety. He admits that he had tried to fail the exam on purpose, but his father intervened to protect him. Blake pushes toward the locked exits, but alarms suddenly blare throughout the school.
We're still in lockdown until this is done.
Despite the protests of angry parents outside. Trapped, Blake and Lena climb into the ventilation shafts to hide as they crawl through the narrow passage. Blake confronts her, furious that she once sold cheating lenses to desperate students. He accuses her of profiting from the deaths of innocent children and mocks the idea that she might have spent the money on luxury. Lena reveals the truth. She used the money for her mother's treatment, which ultimately failed. His anger softens and he apologizes. Lena admits that she once envied Ellie, and with tensions easing, they follow the cables toward the server room. Meanwhile, Mason is informed about the stolen teacher's key Lena used earlier, and he lines up all faculty members for inspection. Governor Redding scrambles to contain the story as panic spreads through the media. Inside the vents, disaster strikes when Blake slips through and plunges into the school's pool. He sinks unconscious, forcing Lena to leap after him. She drags him to the surface, resuscitates him, and refuses to let him die. They change into dry clothes found in the lockers, exchanging shy smiles and playful glances as the bond between them grows. In another part of the building, the students who pass the exam grow restless and furious at being held in confinement. When one boy mouths off, a guard beats him down, unaware that Kellen captures the abuse on his phone and forwards it to journalist Wendy Banks. Back in the vents, Lena and Blake spot the server room through a grate, but disaster strikes again, as the magnetic key slips from Lena's pocket and lands near the guards. Luckily, the darkness hides it from view, and Blake covers Lena's mouth before her frustration can give them away. They drop into a nearby biology classroom, where she rigs a magnet and wire to pull the key back from the floor. The noise draws a guard, and Blake doesn't have time to retreat. Lena snatches the key, just as Blake launches into another fight. He wins, strips the guard of his uniform, and disguises himself. With no time to lose, Blake and Lena part ways. He heads off to free the others, while she presses on toward the server room. In the waiting room, Miss Birch approaches Mr. Glass and suggests a drink together to ease the tension. She hints that she loses control when alcohol is involved, distracting him long enough to steal his magnetic key. Suspicion immediately falls on Glass, and Mason begins beating him in search of answers. Meanwhile, Lena slips into the server room and attempts to access the system, but the console requires a password. She quickly sends a message to Kellen asking him to find camera footage of Mason entering the code. When the power is restored, Kellen responds, guiding her to the numbers she needs. Lena logs in and checks Karen's results, relieved to see that her little sister passed. Then, she searches for her own name and discovers she scored 98%, yet her record has been marked as a failure. Her shock deepens when she checks Wade, who passed with only 42%, and Blake, who received a mere 15%. She also pulls up Ellie's file from the previous year, proving that she too had passed, but was still condemned. As Lena uncovers the truth, breaking news interrupts the broadcast. Governor Redding announces that Lena Michaels failed the test, escaped, and killed 2 guards. At the same time, journalist Wendy Banks receives Kellen's video of a student being beaten by a guard. Realizing the official story is false, she puts it on air, exposing the brutality to the public. Lena then sends screenshots of the corrupted test results, showing the rigged scores. Mason spots her on the school cameras and closes in. Blake finds the room where the condemned students are held and orders the guards to move them, but they refuse, forcing him into another fight. Lena is captured and dragged into the same chamber, where she finds Blake already restrained, beaten, and unable to move. Kellen manages to forward Lena's evidence to Wendy, who interrupts the broadcast with breaking news. She reveals the falsified results, showing Lena with the highest score in the school, while Blake, the governor's son, had the lowest but was allowed to go free. The revelation sends shockwaves across the country, placing Redding's reputation on the line. In response, the governor orders Mason to revise the list and release Lena along with a few others. She embraces Blake with a desperate kiss, trying to take him with her, but the guards drag her away and strap him into her chair. Wade suffers the same fate. One by one, the students who failed are injected, their cries silenced as they collapse into unconsciousness. Finally, the school gates open. Families rush in, some to reunite with their children, others to face devastating loss. Lena finds Karin in the crowd and holds her tightly, tears streaming down her face. Soon, Miss Birch arrives to comfort the survivors, and nearby, Kellen embraces his father with relief. In the aftermath, Mason is chosen as the scapegoat for the falsified results. Public suspicion of the governor fades after it is revealed that his own son was supposedly taken in the purge. Redding presents himself as a man of principle, declaring that he is no hypocrite and that his child sacrificed his life for the greater future of America. But the truth is far darker. Later, a large truck rolls toward a restricted compound. Inside, it does not carry bodies for execution, but living students condemned to serve. Among them is Blake. The failed teenagers are forced into slave labor, assembling the very tablets used for the exams that condemned them. In the shadows of the factory floor, a young woman pulls off her mask. Blake stares in shock as he recognizes her face. Ellie is alive. Blake and the others who failed the test were believed to be executed. In reality, the public was deceived. Instead of death, they were secretly transported to an underground labor facility run by Asaru Global, forced to manufacture phones and electronics for corporate profit. The next day, the failed students arrive at the facility and are greeted with a polished video presentation. A woman on the screen tells them they are the chosen ones, given a second chance at life. The place is called the Incubator, a program created by Asuru. She explains that they are here to work and that the most productive member of the incubator will eventually be reintroduced to society. The message ends with cheers as the terrified teenagers cling to hope, grateful to still be alive. They are assigned to their workstations, each implanted with a device in the neck. A mechanical voice outlines the routine. 14 hours of labor each day, followed by a single hour for food and personal time. At night, they must report to their bunks without exception. As the orientation videos play, Blake catches a glimpse of Ellie. His heart stops. She is alive. Desperate, he searches for her, and at last, they reunite. Overcome with emotion, Blake holds her close, unable to believe she survived. Ellie whispers for him to meet her during curfew. When the hour comes, they steal time together in the living quarters, their reunion both intimate and fragile in the oppressive atmosphere. Later that night, Blake is speaking with his friend Heather when alarms blare through the facility. One of the workers has climbed high, trying to life rather than face endless servitude. A group of boys below, led by Cage, egg him on to jump. At the last second, guards deploy nets, pulling him down alive. Instead of freedom, he is dragged away to the infirmary, where those who resist are sedated with powerful drugs that strip them of will. Soon after, Cage himself approaches Blake in the living quarters, and the meeting marks the beginning of a new tension inside the incubator. Cage corners Blake in the living quarters and declares that Ellie belongs to him now. The next day in the cafeteria, Ellie sits quietly at a table, her eyes downcast, when Cage arrives with his men. In front of everyone, he leans in and kisses her. Ellie stiffens, clearly uncomfortable but unable to resist. From across the room, Blake and Heather watch helplessly, powerless to intervene. Cage and his men are known as the Worthy, a group handpicked by the incubator to oversee the other workers. When they leave, Blake approaches Ellie, but she begs him to stay away, fearing for his safety. Almost immediately, Cage's men surround him and order him to back off. Blake resists, fighting fiercely, but Cage steps in, quickly overpowering him. Blake and Ellie manage to flee the cafeteria, but their escape is short-lived. Mason King, the disgraced supervisor of the thinning exam now reassigned to the incubator, captures Blake. With brutal force, he twists Blake's leg until it breaks. Far above ground in Texas, a memorial service is held for Blake, who the public still believes was executed after failing the test. Governor Dean exits the ceremony under a barrage of reporters' questions. His reputation has been badly damaged by the exposure of fraudulent scoring, and Lena has become a figure of interest in the press for her role in revealing the truth. Reporters surround her, but she brushes them off. Dean shifts the blame to Mason King, calling him solely responsible for the corrupted system. But the Department of Population Control isn't convinced and assigns a private investigator, Agent Joanne Morris, to the case. The next day, Joanne visits Lena at her home. Lena offers nothing of value, forcing Joanne to leave her card and walk away. Soon after, Lena receives a knock at her door. A security guard named Jack delivers an invitation from Governor Dean himself. Later, she visits him in his office. Dean confides that he wants her help with his presidential campaign, but Lena refuses outright and storms out. On her way back, she encounters Georgina Preston, the CEO of Asuru Global. whose company funds Dean's political ambitions. With calculated words, Georgina warns Lena to reconsider for the sake of her siblings, Karen and Joey. Georgina Preston tries to buy Lena's loyalty, promising that her siblings will never face the thinning test if she agrees to work for Asuru Global. Lena refuses. On the drive back, Jack takes a wrong turn, and before she can react, gas fills the car, knocking Lena and her siblings unconscious. She awakens in a deserted construction site. Jack and several others stand before her, and to her shock, Miss Cole, Corinne's school teacher, is among them. They reveal themselves as members of an underground organization known as The Fight. They warn that if Dean is elected president, the system will never end, and they need Lena as their spy inside his campaign. With no choice, Lena agrees. Meanwhile, her best friend Kellen begins an internship at Wendy Banks' news station. While digging into the aftermath of the thinning, he notices a disturbing gap. There are no records of anyone handling the bodies after execution. That night, he rushes to Lena's house and convinces her to come with him. Together, they dig up Blake's grave, only to find his coffin empty. 8 months pass. The presidential election is only 2 weeks away. Dean campaigns tirelessly, while Lena works at his side, feeding information back to Miss Cole and the resistance. Frustrated with their lack of progress, Lena confronts them during another meeting at the construction site. She accuses them of breaking their promises and forcing her to support Dean's lies. Miss Cole calms her, assuring her that they now know the truth lies in Georgina's computer. They give Lena a device capable of unlocking it. Her next mission is clear. She must find a way into Georgina's system undetected. Far beneath the surface, Blake and the other survivors endure endless labor. His leg never healed, and he limps with every step. He hasn't spoken to Ellie in months. One night, Cage and his worthy storm his quarters, gagging him and pounding his injured leg until he cries out in agony. The next morning, Blake drags himself to Dr. Langley's clinic, lying that he slipped in the shower. When he returns, he tells Heather to deliver a message. Ellie must be at Cage's boxing match tomorrow. Back above ground, Kellen uncovers the truth about the labor camps. He discovers that Asuru Global has no manufacturing plants of their own. Instead, they outsource supplies through Hata XPAC, a company capable of producing enough rations to feed 100,000 people every year. Proof that the so-called executions are nothing more than a cover for the labor camps. Kellen rushes to Wendy Banks with his discovery, but she dismisses him.
No photos, no proof, no story.
There is no story they can publish. Later that evening, he gets into his car, only to be ambushed by a masked man hiding in the back seat. The attacker tries to suffocate him, but Kellen fights desperately, breaks free, and flees to Lena's house. Knowing their conversations are monitored by Asuru, he writes his revelations in a notebook to warn her in silence. Election day arrives. Lena drops her siblings off with Miss Cole before heading to Asuru's headquarters, where Governor Dean and his allies await the results. At one point, she excuses herself, only to be escorted to the restroom by a guard. Deep underground, Cage hosts another brutal match at the incubator. Blake suddenly steps forward and declares himself a challenger. The crowd falls silent as he demands leadership of the worthy if he wins. Cage accepts. Despite his injured leg, Blake fights through the pain, enduring Cage's strikes and retaliating with everything he has. The students roar his name, and after a grueling battle, Blake defeats him. That night, Ellie lies motionless in her bunk. When guards approach, she lashes out in a desperate bid for freedom. Her resistance is fierce, but she is eventually subdued and dragged to the infirmary for punishment. Seizing the moment, Blake gathers Cage's men and reveals the truth. The executions are a lie. Every failed student is sent here for forced labor. He warns that the promise of reintegration into society is nothing but a trick, and they will all remain prisoners forever. At first, the group resists, but Blake's conviction wears them down until they agree to unite against the system. Blake heads with one ally to rescue Ellie, while the others prepare to rally support in the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Lena escapes through a bathroom window and makes her way into Georgina Preston's office. Using the drive Miss Cole provided, she gains access to the computer system. To her shock, she discovers hours of surveillance footage from the incubator. Her heart races as she sees Blake alive. Fighting back tears, she quickly transfers the files to the hard drive. Inside Georgina's office, Lena rushes to finish as Georgina approaches the door. Jack stalls her with a lie, claiming that Dean urgently wants to see her. Lena slips the hard drive into her pocket and retreats to the restroom. But when Georgina realizes the trick, Jack is restrained by guards, leaving Lena on her own. She quickly calls Agent Joanne Morris, hoping to finally expose the truth. At the incubator, Blake deliberately injures himself to be taken to the clinic, where Ellie is held. With the help of a friend, he ambushes a guard and stops the doctors from injecting her with sedatives. They tear out the tracking devices from their necks and make their escape. Meanwhile, in the cafeteria, Cage starts a brawl with another worker to create chaos. Soon, the entire room erupts in rebellion. Mason storms in with guards, furious, but when he checks Blake's tracker, it shows him still in the clinic. On a rooftop terrace, Lena meets Joanne and hands her the hard drive, explaining everything about Asuru. But the betrayal cuts deep. Joanne reveals she works for the corporation as well. She pulls a gun, forcing Lena to fight for her life. Lena manages to disarm her and escapes with the hard drive. Desperate for help, she runs to Kellen, who copies the files to deliver them to Wendy Banks for broadcast. Lena hides in his home for safety, but when Kellen starts his car, it explodes, killing him instantly. Soon, Joanne arrives with armed men to finish the job. Lena sets a trap, blowing up the guards, but Joanne survives. The two clash once more, and this time, Lena pushes her down the stairs, ending her for good. Back underground, Blake and Ellie disguise themselves as nurses and flee through the basement tunnels. Mason tracks them down, chasing them to a ladder that leads to the surface. They climb desperately, reaching daylight at last, celebrating their escape. But just as freedom is within reach, Mason attacks again. At Asuru headquarters, the election results are announced. Governor Dean Redding wins the presidency, securing his power. Celebrations erupt across the country as Dean Redding is sworn in as the new president of the United States. But the victory is short-lived. At the same time, Lena finally reaches the BNC News Center and delivers the evidence to Wendy Banks. Together, they rush to the incubator's location by helicopter and broadcast the shocking footage of Mason fighting Blake. The world watches in disbelief, and Dean is stunned to see his son alive. Even as the broadcast spreads, Dean begins his first presidential address, ignoring the chaos. Behind the scenes, his aide warns Georgina that the scandal cannot be contained. But Georgina already has a plan. She orders the arrest of anyone who has ever spoken against Redding, intent on crushing democracy itself and securing total control. Inside the incubator, Lena and Blake finally reunite. Their kiss is interrupted when Lena notices Ellie standing behind him, creating an uneasy tension. Before they can decide what comes next, soldiers storm in and arrest them both for speaking against the thinning system. As they are driven away in a police van, an accident sends the vehicle crashing. Miraculously, they survive. Out of nowhere, Jack arrives and frees them. He promises that together they will defeat Redding and Georgina and restore freedom. The story closes on this uncertain hope, ending with a hint of another chapter still to come.